a lot of Giant fans have been attacking Daniel Jones, thinking that Daniel Jones is not the quarterback of the future. A lot of people are taking shots at Gettleman because when he had an opportunity to get Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert decided to go back to playing his senior year of college football, that was their chance of landing Justin Herbert, and they decided not to go after him the year after when he was in the draft. So I know a lot of people have been jumping up Gettleman's throats, telling him that Daniel Jones was the worst pick, the worst quarterback possible for the position as the next New York Giants quarterback. I will say this. The Mannings, Eli, Peyton, and even Archie, everybody knows that the Mannings have a lot to do with what the Giants do at the quarterback position. They've been in the ear for the New York Jets, Peyton Manning with Adam Gase, and Archie and Eli has been in the ear of Dave Gettleman. When they decided to draft Daniel Jones, why do you think they decided to draft Daniel Jones? Daniel Jones is so much like the Mannings. And maybe he's not a pocket present quarterback like Eli and Peyton. He's a lot faster outside the pocket, but they both had the same quarterback coach in high school and college. So when you talk about Daniel Jones and how gracious he is, it's going to take a little while for Daniel Jones to figure things out. It's going to take a little while. And it's been 3 years. And this is the year that Daniel Jones is going to have to break out. Or he's probably going to be gone, and so is Dave Gettleman. But last week, when they played Washington, Daniel Jones had one of his best games. He threw the ball well. He made good decisions. He moved inside and out of the pocket. Should have had 2 touchdowns. He played fantastic. And Giant fans all the time after the game, they've been doing this forever. It doesn't matter. I remember when Daniel Jones had 3 or 4 400-yard games in his first season. He's one of only 3 quarterbacks to ever do that. And Giant fans said, I don't like him. I don't think he fits here. I don't think he's going to be any good. Because they don't want to give him a chance because he's not Justin Herbert. He's not Sam Darnold. I remember Matty Caps for our old show, Third and Long, loved Sam Darnold. And he's a big Giant fan. And when the Giants had a chance to decide if he wanted Saquon Barkley or if they wanted Sam Darnold, they chose Saquon Barkley. Was it the right decision? No. Now Sam Darnold's playing in Carolina, playing good football. And he's obviously still rooting for Sam Darnold, but not because he's a Giant fan. This is the problem with Giant fans. You should be riding on whoever your team decides is your quarterback. Now, I don't know what he is. We still don't know what he is. And we probably won't know what he is until the end of this season. But I will say this. Week 2, he was one of the best quarterbacks in all of football. And I know the numbers don't squeak out or show that he was. Well, that's because half of his team didn't catch the ball. So that's the huge problem for the New York Giants. It's not the quarterback play. It is their wide receivers. The Darius Slaytons, Odell Beckham-like. Or Evan Ingram, we've been making fun of him for years, Mr. Pot Hands. Yeah. Sterling Shepard, who's finally catching the ball after 4 years, who got a new contract. Ooh.
He's the only one playing well.
Nobody's catching the ball. And that is a huge problem for the New York Giants. They need to score. When they're in a division where they're playing the Cowboys, they're a very big offensive team. They're playing the Washington football team, where they're a very good defensive team. And then they have, obviously, the Philadelphia Eagles, where we don't know who the hell they are. So they could be a good offensive team, good defensive team. We don't know what they are.
They've played well defensively this year, though. First 2 games against Atlanta and San Francisco, though.
No, well, let's not say it. Atlanta, they're not good. San Francisco's pretty good. But what I'm saying is the New York Giant fans need to worry about nothing from the quarterback position. I think it's more for the wide receiving position because nobody is catching the ball. And defensively, let's be honest, this defense, where we expected this defense to be top-notch from last year, a top 10 defense all around, what's going on with Leonard Williams? Leonard Williams got a huge contract in the offseason for the New York Giants, and he is not showing up this year. He had 13 and a half sacks last year of some kind, and he was a Pro Bowl player. Now, all of a sudden, he got his contract, a.k.a. Muhammad Wilkerson, ex-New York Jet. They're both ex-New York Jets. They get their contract and they completely disappear off the face of the earth. This is not good for the Giants. This defense, their secondary is as good as secondary in football. They added Jackson in the offseason. They added all these pieces to make this defense better. And Ramsey was getting looked at as a coach in the offseason. He decides to stay with the Giants. I bet you he regrets that. Mm-hmm.
He gives himself some of the blame, too. He says he has to be better with the play calling. I think the Giants' defense, the biggest problem has been the fact that they have lacked edge rushing as well. They traded Marcus Golden last year at the trade deadline when they weren't contending. They also lost Kyler Fackrell in the offseason. And they're relying on a lot of youngsters to really get it going. And when they have the interior pressure reliance that they do, they still need some complements on the edge. Now, despite Leonard Williams' struggles, Dexter Lawrence has still played well outside of the offside penalty. And James Bradbury has still been very good. But the rest of the defense has been very questionable this year in terms of just consistent reps. And for a team that relied on its defense so much last year, it's going to be very hard for them to do well if they fall the way they did. Now, I expected them to regress a little. I didn't expect them to be top 10 again, but I at least expected them to still be strong. And they have not been that this year. And for Daniel Jones, I'm encouraged for sure against Washington. That's the best game he's played against a good defense. A lot of his 400-yard games he had his rookie year came against, outside of Tampa, bad teams. So this is a good sign against a very good defense in Washington. I know they've underperformed this year, but they're still very talented. That's a good sign in the right direction. Receivers, come on, what are you doing, guys? Darius Slayton especially dropping the pass in the end zone. Kenny Golladay, you're seeing how he's only being used on simple
Notice
routes.
I didn't even mention Kenny Golladay.
Yeah, he's only being used on simple routes, which shows that he's not really back yet with his injury. And even when he's so, how good of a route runner is he really when it comes to what he was showing with the Lions? He was a good deep threat. He was a good tough catch guy. But in this kind of offense, it's going to be very hard. And the offensive line still had their woes. Even though Andrew Thomas has played well, the rest of the team has struggled. So Daniel Jones is playing well amidst those circumstances. So I give him credit for progressing the way he did for a guy that's had trouble sensing pressure in the past, that's had trouble with turnovers. And again, most of his great games have come against bad defenses. This is a good step in the right direction for a defense that's very talented.
No, I absolutely agree with you, Speedy. And I think Daniel Jones deserves a lot of credit. The performance that he gave to the New York Giants, and Giant fans should be excited to see what Daniel Jones did in week 2. And we'll see what he does in week 3 against the Atlanta Falcons. This is the Giants' good chance. A very good chance for the Giants to get their first win against a very bad Atlanta Falcon team. Now, their offense is pretty good. They stayed in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. Atlanta showed you that they can compete. So they'll be able to compete with the Giants offensively. I don't think they're going to be able to compete with the Giants defensively. So if Kenny Golladay, and I'm going to mention Kenny Golladay because I can't stand him. If Kenny Golladay can actually catch the ball, Darius Slayton can catch the ball, Evan Ingram can catch the ball, Kyle Rudolph can catch the ball, all these guys can catch the ball, the Giants will win their first game of the season, and we can start talking about 2 back-to-back games of Daniel Jones, and Giant fans can get his name out of their mouths. It's just terrible what they say about this kid. But I want to get into week number 3 and some of the games that really stand out, and then we're going to obviously do our free-for-all picks of the week. Who's in the lead for that?
It is tied right now because you actually did pick the Ravens right, but you had them on the under. So I got the Bills last week. That was the only point. We both got the Titans, so we're tied right now.
Okay, so we're right there neck and neck. So I want to get into some of the games. There are certain games that really stand out to me that I can't wait for. Tennessee and Indianapolis. This is a game that I think is going to be very, very close. I don't know if Carson Wentz is going to start. It doesn't seem like he is. It seems like Eason is going to start. If Eason starts, obviously I'm going to say that Tennessee is definitely going to be the favorite in this game. Tannehill and obviously Derrick Henry coming off a huge game last week, 180 yards or something like that.
182 yards. And he also had 6 catches, too, for like 41 yards.
We all know what Derrick Henry is. Some people say he's the best running back. He's definitely the best power back in all of football, but he looked unbelievable. And with Indianapolis, their defense needs to wake up. This is still one of the best front sevens in football. They have one of the best linebackers in football, and Leonard. I want to see this defense really show up in this game. If they lose this game, they're done, Speedy.
Yeah, they're in a lot of trouble if they lose this game. Now, I think they can hang tough even without Carson Wentz because of the way this team is structured, especially defensively. We've seen them this year have a lot of trouble with big plays. I don't think their overall defense when it comes to a play-by-play sequencing has had trouble. It just had trouble with some top wide receivers. Cooper Kupp went off on them last week, and Tyler Lockett in week 1. So they've done well at shutting down one guy but not the other so far, these dynamic receiving cores, and the Titans another one of those, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. Julio Jones went off last week. Maybe this week's A.J. Brown's week. We'll see on that. But they've done well in the past against Derrick Henry, so I think between the urgency and the fact that they need this game defensively, you're going to see more of a ball control type game plan. Jonathan Taylor, when will he wake up? And this offensive line, too, that has been decimated with injuries this year.
Kansas City and the LA Chargers. This is going to be a fun game to watch. 2 young quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, who arguably is the best quarterback in the league. I beg to differ, but he is in some people's minds. Ravens. And then Justin Herbert, who's playing fantastic football. He's been sensational as well. Loses a very close one against Dallas last week, so he's going to come out strong. Both teams 1-1 going into week 3. I think with Patrick Mahomes, he's going to have to get Tyreek Hill involved in the game. He was not involved in week 2 against the Baltimore Ravens. That is the secret to this game for the Kansas City Chiefs. As far as the LA Chargers, their defense needs to wake up in this game. Joey Bosa needs to get to the quarterback. He needs to scare and put pressure on Patrick Mahomes, and this running game needs to wake up. This is something that we have seen a huge problem of. Eckler is a good player. Last week, there was some bright spots in their running game in certain aspects of the game, but to me, this is a run-first, throw-second team, and I want to see that this week. If they're going to be Kansas City, they're going to have to run the ball very, very well, Speedy.
Yeah, Eckler is somebody that did well running in week 1 and didn't do well receiving. Then week 2, he did well receiving and not running. So he's kind of one or the other, but not both. And the Chiefs' run defense over the years has been an issue for them, even when Spagnuolo has taken over, because of the fact that they don't have as much interior defensive line outside of Chris Jones, and linebacker has always been a question mark. So definitely that's going to be one factor. And then the defense, too. Brandon Staley's done a nice job, I think, coaching it, considering how much they lost in the offseason, but they still have to do better to get to the next level against the Chiefs, where this is going to be a closer game because of the red zone defenses, because of different matchups that the Chargers can use. Especially you saw the Ravens shut down Tyreek Hill the way they did. I'm not saying the Chargers have the talent capable enough to do that, but they definitely have the coaching. And Derwin James has played very well for the Chargers this year, so that'll be the big step they need. And Justin Herbert, while he has played well, has had a couple sloppy interceptions, but that's really been it. So if he can take care of those, maybe they can steal this game.
Chicago and Cleveland, 2 teams that a lot of people thought could be playoff teams. Cleveland obviously is going to be a playoff team, but now they lost Landry for a significant amount of time. Is Odell Beckham going to play in this game? Is he going to make his first appearance in week 3, which we haven't seen him all season from his ACL injury? That's going to be a very important secret for this offense to wake up, because they don't have a number 1 wide receiver. I don't want to hear about some of the young wide receivers that they drafted. They need Odell Beckham on the field, even with the great tight ends that they have. Chicago, Justin Fields. I want to see Justin Fields play in this game, and I predicted that he was going to come in week number 3. Andy Dalton couldn't stay healthy. I think Chicago's defense is going to need to show up in this game and shut down a guy like Baker Mayfield. If they could put pressure on Baker Mayfield, they win this game.
Yeah, the defense, I think, is the biggest X factor for Chicago, because Justin Fields is going to be somebody that's going to be dynamic either way. As long as he doesn't turn the ball over, we know he can run, he can roll out and extend plays. And Cleveland's defense hasn't been as good as advertised so far. I mean, granted, week 1 they played against the Chiefs, but even against the Texans last week, a team they should dominate against, they still had some trouble defensively. So I actually think Fields will play very well. The question is, will these other targets start stepping up? David Montgomery did well week 1, down week 2. Allen Robinson has struggled to start the year. And defensively for the Bears, at the tale of 2 weeks, they intercepted Joe Burrow 3 times last week. But Cleveland's a much more deeper offense all around. Even though the Bengals have good skill players, the Browns are loaded.
LA and Tampa, this is the game of the week, ladies and gentlemen. 2 undefeated teams, 2 very talented teams, 2 very good quarterbacks. Obviously, Tom Brady, a.k.a. the GOAT, and obviously Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay. We all know about Sean McVay and his little mishap in the Super Bowl against Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. They meet again with a new quarterback. I can't wait for this game. I think this is going to be a high-flying game, a very high-scoring game. I think both defenses are very talented. You talk about the Buccaneers with their secondary playing as well as it has, and their front 7. They can get at the quarterback. And the L.A. Rams with, obviously, Aaron Donald and Ramsey, 2 of the best at their positions. I think this is going to be a fun, high-flying game, Speedy. Anybody could win.
Yeah, this is interesting because the Rams' receiving depth is very young. Outside of Kupp and Woods, a lot of second-round picks, third-round picks. And Tampa, we know the offensive skill players they have. So whichever team can get their depth more involved, I think, wins this game. Because you got to figure that Jalen Ramsey's going to get his against whoever he guards. And same thing with Carlton Davis. And then the number 2 corners have played well for both teams as well. So I think whichever coach can outsmart the other in terms of getting the depth involved, whether it's tight ends, whether it's the running backs, because both these teams have had trouble running the ball so far this year and getting the running backs involved. So I think whoever wins that makes a difference. Now, it is in L.A., so that could give the Rams an advantage. And also, the Rams beat Tampa last year, so it's not like they're bad matchups necessarily for the Rams.